Well, at the moment he is in Madagascar. He's being held in a military camp right on the northwestern point of the island.
Okay.
And as I said, he's in a military camp. For all intents and purposes, he is a prisoner. He is being held in a small room. He has no immediate access to medical attention. He is not allowed to go out and take fresh air unless under supervision, and the camp is heavily guarded.
Okay. Why did he leave South Africa in the first place? I mean, we're made to believe that at least he was safe here. Didn't he know that he was going to be arrested when he lands in Madagascar?
Well, the president was quoted on the weekend as saying he would rather be in detention in a prison in Madagascar than be in exile in South Africa.
Okay.
It doesn't mean to say that he is not appreciative of what the South African government did for him. But he was here for 5 years.
Yes.
And since 2011, when the roadmap was signed, which provided for his unconditional return, he's been trying to get back to Madagascar. And every attempt that he's made has been foiled. And as recently as February this year, the current president, Ravalomanana, said that he could return once the government was established. Well, the government was established in February. In May this year, the president again, in May this year, I met with the president and former President Ravalomanana, and there was an agreement that they would engage in a consultative process, which would then result in the return of Ravalomanana. Well, since May this year, the president has not once responded to requests that we've made for meetings to discuss the return. In a nutshell, the former president lost patience, and he decided that unless he essentially took it into his own hands and forced his way back, he would never get back.
Okay. Is this a political matter or is it a legal matter? And if it's a legal matter, what are the charges? Has he been charged?
He has not been charged. He has not even been arrested since he's been back. When he was taken into custody on Monday last week, there was no arrest warrant. He was taken away. When the basis for his detention was questioned, President Ravalomanana said that it was protective custody because his life is in danger.
From who?
Well, we don't know. But the point is, if you are in protective custody, you're not held in prison conditions. You're not guarded the way he is. You're not taken to a place 700 kilometers away from his home in Antananarivo. Bearing in mind, he hasn't been with his family for 5 years, been at home with his family for 5 years. His wife was here for some of the time, but went back a couple of years ago. So the reason for his detention and the basis of his detention is an unknown factor. And clearly, I think the public in Madagascar is being misrepresented.
So tell me, you obviously, act in a legal environment. What are you going to do? What's the next step for you?
Well, we've tried over the years to exercise legal rights. During much of that time, the government was a coup government, illegitimate. Any institution that was part of that government was equally illegitimate and not recognized by the international community. Laws in that environment are not really there to be implemented. They're not implemented fairly by courts. So to try and exercise legal rights was a waste of time. We'd hoped that in the new current environment, one would be able to exercise legal rights. Now, what I can say to you is that when he wanted to manage his return transparently, his passport had expired. We applied for a new passport. He was asked by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Madagascar to surrender his old passport, which I personally did. I traveled to Madagascar, handed in his old passport, two in fact. We had a letter in writing. We had an undertaking in writing that he would be given a new passport. Well, he wasn't given a new passport.
All right.
So the government itself doesn't seem to implement its own laws. He is entitled as a citizen to a passport, as is any other citizen.
SADC has expressed their opinion on this matter. Do you think they would have any progress if they were to try and get him released?
I think SADC is in a position to put pressure on the government, and I would like to see them put a lot more pressure.
Okay.
The African Union is in a position to put pressure on the government of Madagascar. I'd like to see them put pressure.
Okay.
In my view, I think that they are not putting enough pressure, and they're not saying sufficiently loudly and publicly how the present regime is not acting like a democratic government, rather like its previous coup government.
Okay. Now, you obviously would know that he's a sickly man. How is his health? Is he being allowed medical attention and all that?
He's not a sickly man. He's a well man. He's a healthy man, physically and emotionally. But like many people in their 60s, he has some chronic medication that he needs to take. And he is on chronic medication. He now has access to that.
Okay.
But that was only really through the endeavors of his family, who had to take a private flight to get there 700 kilometers away. And I should just mention also that when they tried to fly back, the government issued a NOTAM, which is a directive to say that the plane could not take off. And essentially they were effectively detained in the same region. They could not get back by aeroplane, so they hired they either hired or borrowed a motor car and drove for 15 hours to get back to Antananarivo.
If he was to be released, is he prepared to remain in Madagascar, or would he perhaps consider other options of going to live in exile?
It's not a question of being prepared. He wants to live in Madagascar. Madagascar is his country. He wants to live there. He wants to participate in the socio-economic development of that country, to bring it into a state which is healthy and which is prosperous. And that's what he wants to do.
Does he still want to be the president?
I haven't had that discussion with him. What he wants is to be treated fairly in every respect. Whether he is going to ever participate in politics again remains to be seen. I don't know.